So this video right here is all about the cost of living in Houston, Texas. We are going to definitively answer the question, is Houston, Texas an affordable place to live? Now the short answer is absolutely Houston is an affordable place to live, but there's a lot of details that go into determining whether or not this is a great place to live a life and build a family. And we are going to discuss in detail the costs of things like housing, transportation, childcare, healthcare, taxes, insurance, entertainment, and of course the jobs and income potential here in Houston. Because hey, if you want to live a life, you got to be able to afford the life. And so we're going to get to all those details right now. My name's Jake Johnston. I'm with the JJ Home Group, brokered by eXp Realty, and I'm your favorite realtor in the Houston area. And hey, I got to tell you, I'm talking to people every single day that are thinking about moving to Houston from out of the area or within this great community. They're all asking a bunch of different questions about what's it cost to live in the Houston area. So we've got this video coming to you that's going to break everything down that you're going to need to know. I do business completely different from everybody else. So whether you're buying, selling, or investing in real estate anywhere in the greater Houston area, it's going to virtually guarantee you two things. One, your real estate goals will be accomplished at the highest level, and two, you're going to end up with significantly more money in your back pocket at the end of the day. So reach out to me today, or even sooner. You can call or text 281-660-4797. I'm online at jjhomegroup.com, and I've got your back when it comes to buying, selling, or investing in real estate anywhere in the greater Houston area. So as we mentioned, there are a number of factors that contribute into determining whether or not an area is an affordable place to live and raise a family, build a life, and accomplish everything that you want to accomplish. First, and most importantly, you got to have a roof over your head. So let's jump into the housing market here locally in Houston. I'll give you the breakdown on what's been happening. We'll compare ourselves to the national scope, as well as breaking us down and comparing us to other major cities around the state of Texas. So first off, the greater Houston area is actually the 13th fastest growing city in the country. And there's over 250 people every single day moving to the Houston area. Matter of fact, the Woodlands, Texas, which is a suburb and master plan community just north of downtown Houston, located in Montgomery County, recently got rated as the #1 fastest growing city in the United States. And it's no wonder, with a population of over 7.1 million people, that Houston is the 4th largest metro city in the entire country. All right, so earlier I quickly answered the question that yes, Houston is a very affordable place to live. And according to the Council for Community and Economic Research, they've determined that Houston is actually the 2nd most affordable place to live in the entire country. You might ask yourself, what's the #1 place? Well, they've determined that St. Louis is actually the most affordable city when looking at the top 20 most populous cities in the country. But keep in mind, they have a population of just about 2.1 million. So compared to Houston with 7.1 million people, that makes us look pretty darn good. So in addition to being the 2nd most affordable city in the entire country, Houston also is about 6.2% below the national average in terms of affordability. And when you look again specifically at the top 20 most populous cities in the entire country, Houston is about 27% cheaper than those cities combined. So the bottom line is, your dollar can go a lot further in Houston than it can in any other major city in the country. So let's break some things down. So let's jump in and take a look at what's going on with the Houston real estate market today, and we'll break that down and compare it to how that looks nationally and compared to other major cities around the state of Texas. So according to the Houston Association of Realtors, Houston real estate market is on track for another record-breaking year in 2021. As a matter of fact, home sales so far this year are up 1.5% over last year, and the average home sales price has gone up 13.4% compared to 2020. And our median sales price just crossed over the $300,000 mark for the first time. So does that make real estate a safe investment in Houston? Absolutely. It's a great way to protect your assets because we're seeing record appreciation right now in the Houston real estate market. All right, so what does all this mean to how Houston shapes up on a national level compared to other cities around the country? Well, you might be surprised to find out that right now housing in Houston is about 20% more affordable than any other place in the country. That's a national average. And again, Houston pops in at number 2 on the chart as far as most affordable in the country. So second most affordable place to buy a home in the entire country. And going back to our numbers from earlier, when you compare Houston specifically to the top 20 most populous cities in the country, homes here are about 53% more affordable than anywhere else in the country. Now, of course, you have to take into consideration that San Francisco and New York and some other high dollar places are all taken into account. So even if you back those out, which can tend to skew the numbers a little bit, Houston is still 41% cheaper than any other one of those cities on that top 20 list. I think that's a pretty interesting stat. And if you find that you're in the market for a new home, well, Houston lands number 8 on the list in terms of new homes available on the market. As a matter of fact, 23% of all of our available inventory was constructed in the year 2000 or newer. And I know everybody's kind of been keeping an eye on the cost of building supplies, and particularly lumber, which have gone up over the recent months. But hey, I've got a couple of clients that are under contract on new construction properties. They're still getting great deals because guess what? Nationally still, mortgage interest rates are historically low. So there's still some good value out there if you guys are in the market to buy a home. So let's look at how Houston compares to a couple of other cities across the great state of Texas. First off, let's look at the capital city of Austin, Texas, where right now their median home value is $575,000. Now I know Austin's a great place to live. I grew up there. It's beautiful. There's a lot of fun things to do. But if affordability is on your list of top priorities, you may want to consider Houston over that lifestyle in Austin, because at $300,000 here in Houston, your money's going to go a lot further. So another quick comparison with the Dallas-Fort Worth area, they're coming in right now 11% ahead of our median home value here in Houston. They're hovering around $334,000 for a median home price for a single family home up there. And so you might ask the question, why? Why is Houston more affordable than some of these other areas in Texas in terms of housing? Well, some of that could be contributed to the fact that Houston is mostly flat, so there are no real natural borders or boundaries that prevent the expansion of around the greater Houston area. We've always seen the growth kind of naturally expand out from the downtown area. So as you move out, land is a little bit cheaper, it's a little bit easier to build because of the flat terrain, and also the year-round climate here really helps with the fact that we can build homes any time of the year. Labor has always been pretty consistent as well, and until recently, building materials have been relatively inexpensive and easy to get. So as we see the continued growth outward from the downtown area, typically that's why you're going to see some of the remaining suburbs out here have a little bit more value in terms of the amount of house you can buy for the money. All right, so secondly, we want to look at the local jobs market here in Houston, because you're going to need income if you want to support the life here. If you want to build the life, you got to be able to fund the life, right? So let's jump in and take a look. So historically, Houston has always ranked in the top 10 in terms of available jobs in our local economy. Lately, with the COVID-19 pandemic, we've fallen a little bit, and Houston's currently ranking number 45 on the list in terms of job seekers and job opportunities out there. So we have to take a look and analyze how is Houston bouncing back economically from the COVID-19 pandemic. Because quite honestly, we are lagging a little bit in terms of jobs when you compare nationally and around the state. Currently, we've only recovered about 57% of those jobs. Now, the obvious culprit to the lag is the heavy mix of oil-based jobs around the Houston community. But if you look at other oil-based cities around the state, they've seen almost no recovery as far as payroll jobs in the last year. And the good news about Houston is we are a little bit more diversified, where actually 60% of our economy is based on the U.S. national economy, and only about 30% based on the oil and gas industry, with the remaining 10% based off other economic impact factors such as demographics and the Texas Growth Plan. So in order to get some kind of an upside out of this whole scenario, we kind of have to look at this historically. And if you look at some of the previous crashes we've experienced, like the oil bust in the 80s or the financial crisis back in 2008, what we've noticed is that recovery periods have absolutely quickened over the last few years. And so where we don't anticipate extremely long lag of 3 to 5 years for the Houston economy to bounce back, I think this is going to be more of a short-term fix for us. And the good news is that we've already seen jobs coming back in some of the big job market sectors of our economy. And actually, going back to March, we've actually seen a pretty healthy gain in the jobs market, specifically in healthcare, retail, and the food service industry. The unemployment rates in the Houston area after the initial lockdown in April of 2020 the unemployment rate was hovering around 14.5%. And the good news is as of the end of summer 2021, that's fallen to just under 6%. So even though our local recovery has lagged a little bit behind the national average, things do seem to be looking up, as I think more jobs will continue to be created and Houston will continue to get back into that top 10 position that historically we've always been in. So next up, I want to discuss healthcare here around the Houston area, because Houston is actually ranked the number 9 best hospital city in the country. And we're actually home to the largest medical complex in the world, which is the Texas Medical Center. Now, the Texas Medical Center is home to 21 hospitals and 8 different academic research centers, and a network of over 85 hospitals spread out around the greater Houston area. So no matter where you're located, you're sure to be close, relatively close anyways, to some great hospital care. Now earlier I just mentioned that Houston's ranked number 9 in terms of hospital cities in the country. Well, that's based off of a couple of different factors, and that's the infrastructure of our healthcare, access to healthcare, and the overall quality of the healthcare provided here. And honestly, I think the biggest roadblock to us climbing up that list is probably just the overall cost of healthcare, which is not uncommon for a lot of Americans, no matter where you live in this country. So next up, I want to talk a little bit about property insurance costs and property taxes as well. Since all of these be taken into consideration for your overall housing affordability, highly important to walk through this process real quick. And the truth of the matter is both property taxes and property insurance in Texas in general are well above the national average. You might ask yourself why that is. Well, the biggest difference in terms of property insurance for the Houston area is the variety of inclement weather that we face year-round. Between flooding, hurricanes, tornadoes, hailstorms, and windstorms, typically your property insurance costs are going to be a little higher because at the end of the day, it's a higher risk for insurance companies to take on. And so the actual cost of your homeowner's insurance will vary depending on a number of factors, such as the location of your home and any additional insurance that might be required, the age of your home, as well as the overall property value, as well as your deductible. And one of those examples to be particularly mindful of is whether or not your property is going to be located in a designated high-risk flood zone area. Now, a few things have changed since 2017 when Hurricane Harvey blew through here, because FEMA has actually redrawn some of the high-risk flood zone boundaries. And it's always one of the first questions I get with my buyers is they want to know, is the home located in a designated high-risk flood zone area? So the biggest difference is if the home is located in a 100 or 500 year floodplain and you are planning on obtaining financing for your home purchase, your lender will require that you carry flood insurance. And if you're not located in one of those high-risk flood zone areas, your lender is not going to require it, but I would still strongly recommend you at least get a quote on flood insurance, because if you're not required to have it, the costs are usually pretty affordable, and I've always said it's too cheap not to buy. An interesting stat, in 2017, when Hurricane Harvey blew through here, about 50% of the homes that were damaged by flooding due to that hurricane event were actually not located in a high-risk flood zone area. So it's never a bad thing to have, and always a good idea to insure your largest investment in your life. So let's talk a little bit about property taxes in the great state of Texas. The first thing you'll want to know is that your property taxes are based off of a percentage of the assessed value of your home. Now, we have a central appraisal district that will come out and actually do an assessment on your property each year to determine your home's assessed value by the taxing authority in the county. And then we have a tax percentage that is taken against your home's value to determine your overall cost of property taxes for the year. Now, the great thing about Texas is we are a non-disclosure state, which means we don't have to report our sales price to anybody, including the taxing authorities, which is always a good thing to keep in mind. The other piece is that if you believe your taxes are a little high for the year, you have the ability and the right to protest your taxes and present data of comparable sales in your neighborhood, which might lower your assessed value on the property, ultimately resulting in a reduced amount of property taxes. And while yes, Texas does have higher property taxes than pretty much anywhere in the country, the good news and the balance in that equation is that we don't have a state income tax. So you really have to look at the whole bigger picture as far as dollars in versus dollars out at the end of the year. A couple of the other great benefits the state gives to homeowners are certain property tax exemptions that you're entitled to as a homeowner. So the first property tax exemption I want to talk about is the homestead tax exemption. Now, there are a couple of caveats here because you can only claim it on your primary residence, and the biggest key is you must own the home as of January 1st of that year. So as an example, if you close on your home purchase in December, you have to wait until January 1st or after that date in order to file your homestead tax exemption. Now it is a one-time filing, and actually since COVID, they've really streamlined the process where you can go online and fill out this information. You do want to have a copy of your driver's license, and it needs to be a Texas license with your property address listed on there as your primary address. So you'll go online and fill out the form and submit it that way, or you can always fill it out and mail it in directly. But once that homestead tax exemption is filed on your property, it's there until you go to sell the property. So what does the homestead tax exemption mean for you as a homeowner in terms of savings? Well, it'll actually save you about 20% off of the assessed value by the taxing authority in your local county. Now there's a minimum of $5,000 that they have to credit towards your assessed value, but in general it's a 20% savings off of the assessed value of your home. Now the other property tax exemption that you can apply for is age restricted, so 65 and over. At the time you turn 65, you have up to 1 year to file this exemption, and it goes on top of your homestead exemption and can save you an additional $10,000 off of your assessed value by the county. Now, in addition to the $10,000, each school district will always levy taxes against the property owners. And so what that'll do is it'll actually freeze that school district tax rate, and that can never go up for the entire time that you own the property. And the third and final tax exemptions for persons over 65 is that if your property is subject to a flood control tax or a special farm to market tax, it can also save an additional $3,000 off of those taxing authorities as well. And so again, even though the property taxes in Texas are a little bit higher than what you might be used to, there are a number of great ways to save some money through the homestead tax exemption, and if you do qualify for the 65 and over, I recommend that as well. So let's move on to transportation. What does it cost to get around the city of Houston? So first of all, what you need to know is Houston is largely a commuter-based population. Because we're so spread out in a number of great suburbs outside the downtown Houston area, a vehicle is certainly a necessity to get around in Houston. Now, if you don't have a vehicle, and as long as you're within the routes and limits of availability for the Metro bus system, you can ride a bus for $1.25 per ride or a $3 day pass. So overall, the city of Houston is actually about 5% cheaper in terms of transportation compared to other cities around the country. And gas in particular is historically some of the cheapest gas available in the country. Right now, in the fall of 2021, we're hovering right around $2.99 a gallon. And if you are commuting, you want to be mindful of the various toll roads that'll help to get you around the city. Now, toll roads obviously come with an expense, but man, it's a lot easier to jump on some of these toll roads and zip around some of the traffic as opposed to finding your way around and trying to save, anywhere from $1 to $2 per toll booth that you're going to go through. If you are going to need a toll tag, you want to check out the EasyTag, hctra.org, or a Texas tag, which are both accepted on all major toll roads around the city of Houston. And we all know that traffic is pretty legendary around the city of Houston. And the biggest tip I can give you is just plan ahead and plan accordingly, and expect that if you do have to go into town or commuting out of town at the end of the workday, just plan ahead, turn on some good music, maybe an audiobook, and enjoy the ride. And if you want to jump into the express lanes, or if you're carpooling, you can ride in the HOV lanes at no additional cost. But I can say one of the good things and benefits that have sprung out of the COVID-19 pandemic is the ability for a lot of people these days to work remotely. So if that's your case and you don't have to worry about the commute, thank your lucky stars and enjoy the comfort of working at home and being on your Zoom call in your underwear. Moving on next, I want to talk about the overall cost of food and groceries around Houston. Food is absolutely a necessity, so you might want to keep in mind what it's going to cost, whether you're thinking about dining out at one of the many great restaurants around Houston or just going down to the grocery store and picking up a gallon of milk. Now, I've got some very interesting stats for you that I don't even know where I found these online, but I thought it was fun and interesting and worthwhile to share with you. And I'm going to refer to my little notepad here because some of these stats are kind of fun and silly, and quite honestly, I don't have them memorized. Did you know that in Houston, a hamburger is 5% cheaper, a large pizza is 18% cheaper than the rest of the country, a gallon of milk is 42% cheaper than the rest of the country, and we all know that you can go down the street to a taco stand and get a couple of tacos for a few bucks because tacos are always cheap and delicious. But if you are considering heading out for a meal with the family or with some friends, the average meal at a restaurant in Houston will run you about $32 compared to the national average of $35. So you will save a little bit of money, which is surprising to me, to be honest, because Houston has some of the best restaurants in the country. And I don't mind going out and splurging for a nice dinner and having some fun, but at $32 as an average meal, I found that to be pretty interesting. So lastly, I want to talk about the cost of utilities around the Houston area, because again, another necessity, if you have a home, you got to heat it, you got to cool it, and you got to run the light bill. And the state of Texas is one of the only deregulated electric grids around. Now, what does that mean exactly? Really, the easiest way to explain it is that you as the consumer have the ability to shop and compare different electric provider prices and come up with what's the best plan and the best rate for your needs. A lot of companies out there offer different incentives like free nights, free weekends, long-term contracts, short-term contracts, and you can always negotiate this out with the company. You can also choose fixed rates or variable rates, whatever fits your needs. And the truth is that summers are hot in the Houston area, so you're going to run your air conditioning system quite a bit during those summer months, and typically you'll see your greatest expense on utilities are going to come between April and September. But the good news is that overall, Houston has an average utility cost, from an electrical standpoint anyways, of 10.98 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, compared to the national average, we are actually 11% cheaper as a per kilowatt hour comparison. So even though the summers are hot and you will be running your air conditioning quite a bit more, your utility bill is going to go up, but that's okay, because me personally, I'd rather live in comfort and not sweat during my sleep and end up paying a little bit more at the end of the day. But all this goes to say, and I hope you found some good information, very helpful and extremely knowledgeable on, is Houston an affordable place to live? I hope you've answered yes, just like the conclusion I drew as well. And if you're in the market to buy, sell, or invest in real estate anywhere in the greater Houston area, give me a call, give me a text, send up some smoke signals or a carrier pigeon, get in touch with me any way that you can, because I've got your back when it comes to buying, selling, or investing in real estate anywhere in the greater Houston area.